Luke here for Following Strength. We are joined by prominent face in the strongman world, 4 times Ireland's strongest man, world's strongest man competitor, strongman promoter, and the back of the head that you often see at competitions when a deadlift's being given. Dave Warner, how are you, mate?
I'm very well, thank you for having me on.
Oh, it's a pleasure to see your face for one, rather than the back of your head and your hand.
Yes, I like
Um,
to say, yeah. And just for
Brit,
anybody that's watching, I'm the one without hair. You know, Maggie's got the ponytail, and I'm the one that looks like an ostrich egg.
he does have a luscious head of hair. I'm very
He
jealous, to
certainly
be honest.
does. He's aging very well, is that fella?
Well, Dave, fill us in, mate. Brits is coming up, and I think it's really cool for the fans to be able to hear from someone like yourself who's very much in the officiating world. What does Brits look like for a ref? Are there rules meetings? Do the
Yeah.
athletes steer clear of you because they're afraid of you? What's it going to be like?
Well, the Brits has evolved massively. I mean, if I can just give it a little bit of history, back in the day when I competed in it, which is a lifetime ago, it was run very similar to Worlds, where the guys all went away to a holiday camp usually, and we competed over a series of days and whittled it down to a final event of the best 10. The top two out of each group that was created by the organisers. So now we have qualifiers all over the place through official strongman and various other things that where we've got irons in the fire with different countries and things like that. So we've got this for world's strongest man, but ultimately for Britain as well. We're bringing athletes from Scotland, Wales, England, Ireland, and throwing them all into arena. And it's turned into an absolute massive event. I mean, the venue is fantastic. The show is always brilliant. And but for me, I've been involved with official strongman from the very start, and Giants Live, where Darren got involved from pretty much the start with him, where we were running Europe's strongest man in Headingley. So I've been involved. I've been friends with Darren a lifetime. So me and him sort of were the sort of guys that were initially sort of hammering down the signage and putting up the platforms and the stands and everything from the very start, from the roots up. And that role still to a certain degree is elemental to my role now. I still help with setup, layout. Darren has everything planned in his head, so we're just following his instruction. He's very, very, very thorough with all of that, with the organisation of the setup. And that's usually done on a Friday if we get a previous day set up, which will be the case in Sheffield because we've carpets to lay, with massive pieces of equipment to lift in them and power stairs. I think with the bag toss, all those big bits of kit to have ready to roll in. And if you've ever been to a Giants live show, the setup and the reset. I mean, the crew, of which I'm part of one, but the rest of the guys, they work so flipping hard. They do an unreal job. The setups are so quick. And the rule for me then on show day, after that, sorry, you mentioned the athletes meeting. Athletes meeting is Friday evening. It's the Brits is always good because we've always got some new blood in there, people who are there for the first or the second time and are really cutting the teeth in what is a big stadium style, well, sorry, arena style show. We haven't got into the stadiums yet, but we're getting there. And a show that's going to, just as it's full to capacity typically as Britons, and the audiences are always phenomenal, and that's a big factor for these guys because they've come from smaller qualifying rounds, which may have been run in gyms, car parks, very small sort of arena style setups. Jumping into this, so it really is a big step up for the athletes. And with regard to my role as referee, I participate. Will be answering questions and laying out the rules for how we are running each specific event. And the beauty, I think, of Giants Live is we have a simplicity element to what is done there in terms of events. We don't reinvent the wheel. We may tweak it a little bit, we make it turn a little bit faster, but we don't reinvent it. The events are familiar with people. People read the name of the event and it's, what does that mean? What is that? They don't have that factor. It's they know exactly what they're coming to see. They have seen it on the TV. They've seen it at World's Strongest Man. And I think that's a massive appeal. And I think that's why one of the reasons why the arena shows are so successful.
I
So.
I would fully agree with you. I mean, there's going to be 9,000 people in Brits, I think.
Absolutely. I was just having a look there at I just had a look there at the Ticketmaster thing, and there's barely any tickets left. You know, there's a few seats here and a few seats there, usually odd numbered ones, you know what I mean, where you've got three in a row or one in a row where people aren't buying single tickets, or it's two couples coming or a couple coming, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's going to be massive, and the lineup is phenomenal. But the lads usually you in the athletes meeting is one of my favorite parts of the whole event, even though you know it's very relaxed, laid back for us. But the guys that are sitting there, it's not so much because you know perhaps for some of the guys, and we've got some new faces there. They're sitting in a room full of what are now strongman legends. You know, Britain's Strongest Man hosts this event, and the athletes that go forward from that and other Giants live shows and end up competing in Worlds now have really, you know, they've really laid out a fantastic path of success. If you look at the likes of, you know, Paddy's probably the phenomenon of last year. You know, I mean, he's just gone from strength to strength and has done phenomenally well. And it's great to see such a great lad, so much energy, so positive, and just a fantastic all round athlete. And he's getting better every time we see him perform. So you know that's always fun. But I think we've got, as I promote events here in Ireland, nothing major. The stuff I do is all either beginner stuff or qualifying rounds to bring people forward to official strongman. And hopefully, you know, we get somebody that's good enough to come to Giants Live, which is, you know, as I keep telling the lads when they enter that show, they're only two shows away from World's Strongest Man. You know, you do that show, you podium at Brits, you're invited to Worlds. It's that close. You know what I mean? It's sniffing distance if they're of the standard. And this year, I'm really excited because Rory O'Hagan, who has been nipping at the heels for the last 3 or 4 years at the show I've run for the qualifier for Brits, and he's had to fight off some amazing athletes, you know, the Matthew McKeegans, the Paro Dwyers, the Sean Gillans, these guys that are, you know, really superb athletes. But Rory has had an amazing season. He's a quiet fella. He trains pretty. You never see what he's doing. He's not all over social media. He's a quiet kind of a guy, but a phenomenal athlete. And I can't wait for the crowd to see him. And we were lucky because we got a very worthy reserve invite, I feel, for Matthew McKeegan. Now, Matthew McKeegan, he's one of the best 105 competitors in the world, without exception. He's Europe's Strongest Man 2025 under 105. You know, he never fails to perform. Things don't always go his way, but he's a phenomenal athlete. He coaches an awful lot of athletes as well. And I'm really excited to see he has some great events in this show. He's up against it, don't get me wrong. There's some events in there he could really shine at, and I think it's going to be an amazing experience for him. It's all he's wanted, I would say, for the last 5 or 6 years, is to be good enough to go to a Giants live show or Britain's Strongest Man, and he's really sort of thrown himself out there to make sure that he's done everything possible to get his invitation. And thank goodness for him this year, he's got it. So good luck, Matthew. Good luck, Rory. I hope you do Alan proud. I'm sure you will.
Yeah, they are two standouts, and I have heard just in the English scene people whispering Rory's name for years
Yeah.
as the potential next up and comer. And I'm not sure if it's respectful or disrespectful to Rory, but people often say he's the next Paddy Hames. He's got that kind of style about him.
It, it, Rory has this ability to push himself beyond what he's probably capable of at the flick of a switch and suffer badly afterwards, but recover fully for the next event. I've never seen anything quite like it. Even at the qualifier there, he smashed. He did exactly. It was like a textbook performance of what he needed to do, and he was absolutely brilliant. And competed to the point he was outside throwing up and wasn't sure if he was even going to stand up off somebody else. But every event he walked back into after a short recovery, because it was a fast show, he was there and he showed up with, you know, with all guns blazing for every single whistle blow. He was brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
When people make their debut at a show on the level of Brits, a proper Giants live, you know, recorded for Channel 5 and all of that, it seems to go one of two ways, right? Either last year we could look at Ben Glasscock, out of nowhere, came fifth, huge performance, was fighting for the podium. But also the year before that, Paddy Haynes' debut down near the bottom.
Yeah.
And it seems like that first show, it's almost sink or swim. Maybe it's the timing and the pacing. Maybe it's the weight of the events. Maybe it's being in awe of the crowd. Do you worry about that for Rory and Matt, or do you think they've got what it takes to
Um,
handle it?
I think Rory will be okay. He's done some bigger shows. Matthew, the crowd will just fuel him on. He just wants to show the world that a 105 athlete can stand up against those giants and make a mark. And he'll make a mark. I have no doubt about it. Rory, he's a cool customer when he stands up for the whistle. It's just in between times you think he's never going to, but he's there and he's 100%. But with regard to what you've said there, I think is a combination for everybody of all of those things when you're moving up. If you're a new athlete, most people, they are prepared for it now. They know what's coming. If you've aspired to progress in strongman and you're good enough, and you have to be good enough. There's no free meal tickets here. Darren has spent a long time making sure that this system is as good as we can get it, and it's the best it's ever been in terms of qualification. There is no real sort of golden free pass tickets unless you have got a phenomenal history of success. You're not really going to get to Britain's Strongest Man without a full-blown qualification process being followed, and quite rightly so, because and these guys, they've watched the shows on the TV. Most of them will have been to a show, but the difference in, it's intimidating for me sometimes. I'm not so bad now because I've done it so many times. I just focus on what I've got to do. But when you've got, like you say, 8, 9, 10,000 people's roaring and screaming. And I always liken it to, and this might sound a bit cheesy, but if you remember, there was a scene in Gladiator, and Russ, was it Oliver Reed, God rest his soul, made a statement to Maximus about the crowd watching every twist of his sword and every this and that. And that is what these people that come to these shows aren't just sat there stuffing popcorn down their throats. They are on the edge of their seats. They are so invested in our athletes. It's unbelievable. And we get people that come with people that come to every single show. They don't miss a show. They absolutely love it. They absolutely love what's going on. They're so invested, and they obviously have their favourites, but they support every single athlete that steps out, and they just want to see everybody perform out the skins on the day. And have you been to a show?
Yeah, plenty. Yeah.
Plenty. Well,
Three
you
or
know the
three or four
excitement
last
that's
year.
there. Then I'm only repeating what you should already know. And the way that Darren, Colin, and the rest of the team that have built this Giants Live phenomenon up to what it is now. I mean, thank goodness somebody did it to this level, because it really is, for me, as a man that's probably wasted most of his life focused on loving strongman and been involved in strongman. It's just exactly what the sport needs, you know what I mean? And long may it continue, and I know there's big plans for it to go further.
Yeah, I fully agree. My first Giants live was the first Giants that Bish won. I'd probably known Bish for about a year at that point, training at my gym, and we were like, we're going to head up and see you win. And I remember the atmosphere was, and that was like 6 years ago or whatever,
Yeah,
incredible. And still coming now, you can see the growth. And I think most of us come home from a Giants live show and we've lost our voices. We
yeah.
we all come down with the flu for a few days afterward,
Yeah, yeah,
But I
yeah.
wondered, on the day, how is it with the athletes? Are you separate from them and kept apart?
No, no. I would integrate with the athletes a lot. And there are things that I know about certain athletes, about the way they perform certain lifts, one or two of them. And I'll always make sure and point them, make sure, because I don't want to be put in a position where I am forced to give a no lift for something that's close. But I have to be, as fair and reasonable as I can to everybody who steps up on that platform. And of course, I take my job very, very seriously. I'm working alongside Darren, who is absolutely meticulous about how everything has to be run. Every single thing has to be perfect. And if you saw that guy with he's going around with a little tiny paintbrush, touching things in and things like that, people say it's OCD. It's not. He just wants to present the best possible experience at every single level. He's very fastidious in all of that. And I'm working alongside, of course, the great Magnus Magnuson. And Maggie is without doubt the most revered and well-known strongman referee on the globe. No, I don't think anybody can argue that. People. people are always going to point the finger at me or him or somebody else that's refereeing if something is questionable. We're not perfect. We might make the odd mistake. But I think 99.9% of the time, I think we're on the money.
Yeah, I fully agree. And actually, as you were talking about Magnus there, and I thought, actually, he is everywhere. I went to the Spanish Arnold a couple of years ago, and it
Yeah.
was quite a low key comp in terms of the setup. It certainly wasn't a Giants Live,
Yeah. Yeah.
and Magnus was refereeing it, and I was like,
Yeah,
oh wow.
but what better man for the job? You know what I mean? He's fantastic. Disappointingly, they don't choose me and bring me out to Spain 2 or 3 times a year, but never mind, that might happen one day. I'm available for bookings if anybody wants to use me, you know. So, but no, but Magnus we always spend, that's something I do spend a lot of time with on Magnus's shoulder. We discuss every event, we discuss every plausible outcome, and a lot of it is repetitious. We might talk about things that we've spoken about for at previous events, but we just double check and make sure that the rules are absolutely adhered to, and we do our best to make sure that any refinements that need to be made can be made on the day, because there are silly little things that people don't think about in these events, which do happen from time to time, and we have to be aware of. And give you a couple of examples quickly here. There was an issue, not an issue, but there was a situation when we did the Scottish, the World Tour Finals, where Evans Nana went to pick up the wrecking ball. Now, what the crowd sees is Darren Sadler with a whistle in his hand saying lift and blowing the whistle, and the guys lift it up. What I see as a referee, I don't even hear that. I'm waiting for the guy to hit lockout before I press the button on my stopwatch. If he hasn't locked it out, he hasn't even, he hasn't done the full lift. And, so they do, in effect, have the option, which he did. And it was an accident, really. He got halfway up and then put it down, regripped and pulled himself back up again and held it for a phenomenal time. And some people in the crowd were booing. They thought, no, he's cheated. He's done something wrong. But he's only got the time from when he locked out. I hadn't hit the stopwatch because it didn't lock out on the first one. So those were rules I had to be quick enough to sort of apply in my head. It was common sense for me because I was just applying the rules, but it probably looked for some people, what's going on there, because it looked like he'd put it up and put it straight back down again. Well, he wouldn't have even had a time. You know what I mean? He wouldn't even have a time. So it was obviously the rules are the rules, and I just applied them as we always do. And another one, which I can't give you an example when this happened, but it does happen from time to time. It's something we need to watch out for at the Brits, is if you watch the bag toss. I don't know if you've ever seen this happen, but sometimes somebody will toss a bag that is quite a steep angle rather than a long angle, and it catches and sits on top of the bar. What's the referee supposed to do there? We're supposed to stop the stopwatch when it hits at the other side.
Interesting.
So these are things that people don't think about. And obviously, here's the other one. What if it sits on top of there? Does he wait till it falls? Or does he wait because he can't go to the next bag because the stopwatch hasn't stopped? You know what I mean? There's these little things so we've had to come up with a solution for that. And that is that they're allowed to move on to the next bag. And if they throw it over, and once the other bag has hit the floor and that bag comes down at either side, it's still classed as good. So we would take that time, and we have to make a minor adjustment estimate wise as to how long that would take that bag to hit the floor, which might be a second, half a second, maybe less. I don't know, but we would judge that based on other throws, and that's how it works. So it's little things like that that can throw a show completely sideways if you haven't pre-thought them. But every detail, and I'm not saying we won't run into issues and questions and new situations when we are going forward with the Giants live shows, and even at World's Strongest Man, we have to be aware and discuss every possible plausible outcome of what the athlete might face to make sure that the show runs smoothly, and of course the athletes are refereed fairly.
That's a tricky job. One thing that popped into my head as you were talking then, I thought it's a quality of every elite sport in the world that every athlete is going to push and bend the rules as much as they can to gain any
100%.
advantage.
Yeah.
That's across every elite sport. How's that handled at a prominent strongman show? Is it when they go
We
just a little bit too far, is it a warning or is it an immediate no rep?
Well, if you're saying push the rules, if we haven't deciphered it, or we haven't explained it, or we haven't marked it as a specific in the rule book, then of course there might be a gap that people can exploit. I can remember one very, very prominent strongman. He won't mind me mentioning his name is Mitchell Hooper. And Mitchell came up with this idea that when we were doing the sandbag steeplechase, that if he left the bag on top of the bar, went underneath and picked it up off the bar, he didn't have to pick it up off the floor again. Now, to anybody, you think, well, obviously that's not cheating, but it wasn't in the rules. Now the rules have been adjusted. You know what I mean? And he did mention it. Probably shouldn't have done because he might have got away with it. So it was something that could have happened, and we would have had a dilemma there. Was this wasn't in the rules? How do we? Thankfully, it didn't. It didn't occur. Just little things like that, we have to be as strict as we can on and as fair. But it's a moving target because the sandbag steeplechase has evolved. It was first introduced in I think it was 2019. I ran a Europe's official strongman Europe's, and I put it in there, and I came up with a bag loading event with the throw over, but it's been refined. It's much better now because I think I had 4 bags, and they ranged in weight. So you started lightest to heaviest, and then you had to go back lightest to heaviest onto the platform. So it was the same format, just 4 bags instead of 3. And I didn't realize quite how hard it was until I saw some of the greatest athletes I knew fail it. You know what I mean? So then I thought we really need to refine this. And the Giants Live team, and I know other people are using it now, have refined it. It's a great event because it's easy to set up, it's easy to reset, and it's phenomenally hard, and it's a brilliant race.
I love that you are perhaps the originator of the sandbag steeplechase. I bet.
No, well, I get corrected on that every time I mention it by my good friend Aaron Sadler. He says you thought of it, and he said, and I made it better.
Well, I was
which,
gonna.
is, which, to be quite honest with you, has been true of quite a few things, but I won't start down that conversation.
I was gonna say maybe Brits last year. You probably wouldn't have been jumping around telling people you invented the steeplechase because it
No,
took
I keep
out
my head
about
down when
three
they're all
people.
dying on the floor afterwards. I don't go standing over them and say I invented that. No, because I didn't. I'd seen it somewhere before, and I just modified it because and it was all based on when you run in a high volume show with lots of athletes like official strongman, you need to have an event that moves quickly, resets quickly, and you've got equipment that maybe is minimal damage to floors and things like that. So you've just got to work smart, and that was the main reason for me sort of utilizing those bits of equipment to put that event out there. But I love it the way they're doing it now, and I loved it that they used it. A version of it in World's Strongest Man in Myrtle Beach with the different shape bags. I thought that was fantastic. It was so interesting to see people use the different techniques of pickup. Some of the stronger guys were able to throw the bags so they're going a couple of meters in front of the bar. It's a horribly hard event, but fantastic to watch.
I certainly agree. It's fantastic to watch, not to do.
Yeah,
Thinking about controversial calls and stuff, and yeah, how you police that. How is it handled when, in the rare occasion that there is a refereeing mistake? The one that pops
yeah,
into my head lately is Evan Singleton's deadlift with Magnus giving him that
mm,
blurry hand signal.
yeah,
Um, I think, from my point, it was handled brilliantly
yeah,
afterwards.
yeah.
What's
You
the
mean the way Evan
process of
kicked the
that?
bin through the wall?
So I didn't see that.
It's on YouTube somewhere. No,
how,
well,
how do you guys handle that when we've made a mistake here?
um, well, different things have happened over the years, and fortunately, with a lot of events, it's correctable. If it's a mistiming issue, if it's a really close race, everything's pre-recorded, so we can watch back and retime. You know what I mean? So if something's been done and say something's within 100th of a second and it's clearly very, very tight, it might be in 2 separate runs. We can recheck that on the screens very quickly. We can wind it back, start, bump, and we'll have 2, 3 timers, and we'll go with the basis of that after a recheck. And you can even do it at World's Strongest Man. We've done this, and we've actually done it frame by frame. So we've got a frame by frame of crossing. I can remember an issue once with, I think it was Alexi, and it might have been I think it finished with the big toolbox yoke carry they do,
The Kanak
the
one.
Kanak, yeah, it was the Kanak yoke, and I think it was incredibly close, perhaps between him and Tom. And it was down to 100th of a second. I can't remember which way it went, but it was checked out literally in the back of the big lorry where all the screens are. It's like NASA, screens everywhere, and we went through it frame by frame. So we know we've been 100% accurate and fair on those. Usually, there's not often that smaller disparity. I mean, it's usually you can be seen with a stopwatch or an eye, but that was incredibly close. And then you mentioned Magnus's call on Evan. Now, one thing I'll say for Magnus, he is the most thorough man. Where everybody else is sat around chatting and talking, he stood at the warm-up area, watching the guys warm up, because he's refereeing guys he might not have refereed before, and he wants to see technically how they perform that deadlift. Some people would hit the lockout, you think they're locked out, and then they pull with a hip through. You know what I mean? And when you've only got a ref from the front, it's very, very important that you make sure you get that right. You know what I mean? You last thing you want to do is give a soft rep. And certainly, I think in the case of Evan, where if Maggie made a mistake, and I don't know what his exact thoughts are on that, it was one of those sort of situations that we dealt with, we handled, and Magnus was actually going. He was trying to tell Evan to lock out. Perhaps he shouldn't have moved his hands, perhaps he should. But he did, he spoke to me and he said to some of the other athletes there, you must lock out, you've got to lock out until my hand goes down and I say down. And he didn't give him a down command verbally. And I think if you watch his hand, he kind of goes like that rather than like that. I think it was an up, not a down, which was difficult for Evan to interpret. And I think it was just really unfortunate. And with hindsight, I'm sure Maggie would change the way he dealt with that. But I'm not going to call. You saw what happened afterwards and how we dealt with it. Evan didn't get the lift. He tried to lift it again and couldn't, and that was him out of that deadlift. And it was unfortunate. Would Evan have finished that lift if Maggie had sat there with the hand stationary, in frozen time and waited till he got the satisfactory lockout? We'll never know. So it's just an unfortunate thing that happened. And if that's the only thing we've got to talk about in the amount of events that go on, I think that's amazing. But one thing I'll say for Maggie, he doesn't take his job lightly, even though he does lots of it. And he referees guys at the shows in Spain that you're talking about there, the same way he referees at World's Strongest Man. He's a fantastic man and a great referee. And he's taught me an awful lot. He's always my reference book. Between me, him, and Darren, I think we make a pretty solid team from a referee perspective.
Fully agree. And I think that isolated incident with Evan, I think it was handled really well.
Mm.
How everyone just fronted it
Yeah,
up.
yeah, we didn't cover it up. We put it out there. Evan was obviously very annoyed. I don't think so much at Maggie. I think those athletes know. I can remember a similar incident. I was refereeing Lawrence Charlet. I think it might be a Europe's Strongest Man, and Lawrence was a great deadlifter, phenomenal deadlifter. But he had this technique where he hit the top and he was staring at you like the professional is, saying, "You better give me this rep." And then he would just go a little bit further, and he did it when he was heavy deadlifting. And that was just the way Lawrence did it, and it's no critique on his technique because he's phenomenal. You know what I mean? I wish I could deadlift something, 75%, 50% as technically perfect as Loz can. He's brilliant, but I remember going like that, and then he still locked it out, and it taught me a lesson. But that was me sort of a little bit quick on the down signal for Loz, but he got the lift. You know what I mean? Even after giving him the call.
Yeah.
You know.
And it's really interesting to hear about how you manage those close events. I remember Worlds in Sacramento, like 22 or something. I think there was a bus pull,
That's right.
and people were finishing it in the most incredibly close times.
That I think that was actually Myrtle Beach. There was one. It was the yellow bus or the big. Can you remember the color of the bus? Because we used it like a big yellow. We used a big yellow school bus in Sacramento, and I think the times were a bit more spread on that. But we used one in Myrtle Beach, and with hindsight, it was probably just too light for the lads in the setup, and they all pulled it within, some of them within hundreds of a second of each other. It was very, very close, which I don't think is ever brilliant. It's very hard to referee because the thing is with any kind of heavy pull, a bus pull, train pull. Well, train pull is probably the least, but when you're doing a truck or a bus pull, unless those tires are set in exactly the same position at exactly the same point, and the bus has been sort of pre-warmed up, as in run up and down a load of times, each pull can be fractionally different. It's so specific. The smallest thing makes a big difference when you're pulling that kind of a weight. But I think Mitchell Hooper won that event that you're talking about. If it's the one in Sacramento, I'm thinking about, and he won it by a little bit of a margin, but not much, and that says something about the bus pull because it's something that I'd like to see in any bus pull and with any event really. You want some guys that are unable to quite finish it, and then guys that are destroying it. You want a balance of that. Not everybody's sailing through it, but you can't get it right all of the time, and it's so hard in these events now because the world's strongest man setup and resets are much quicker, and they do much more per day than they used to do. So it's a lot more pressure on the setup team. So it's tough because you can test everything 100 times, then come show day, something always changes.
Oh, that is bound to happen. And I think back to like Royal Albert Hall last year. I was there in the crowd, and the stone platforms couldn't come down, so they had to
Yeah.
be dismantled and then rebuilt. It's never going to go right, you know.
No. Hey, but how quick did we do that?
Oh, it was ridiculously impressive.
I know,
Ridiculously
I know.
impressive.
And then we ended up with Tim, one of our crew, where he had to go inside to rebuild it all, and we couldn't get him out.
Okay, that I didn't pick up on.
Did you not?
Um,
Oh, well, we did, because I was saying, well, if you lie down low and just put your fingers in your ears, you'll be all right. But we didn't. We got him out. We got him out safely.
I think I would be remiss not to ask you about maybe the biggest thing you've ever refereed, Eddie Hall's 500 kilo deadlift.
Yeah,
A moment in time that has probably been played a billion times so far on the
yeah.
internet.
They don't
Um,
show enough of me in that, I'm afraid, no.
yeah, you see plenty of Rob Frampton backstage with him and
Yeah.
everything.
Well,
Um,
Rob's always there. I think he's like a lucky charm for these big lifts, is Big Rob.
well,
What a guy.
talk us through refereeing that because obviously it was
Right.
an immense
Well,
moment.
refereeing that, I had literally come back off my holidays the day before that competition, and I have a feeling that Maggie wasn't there for that show, and there was something. I don't know if he was at another event or it was. I'm not sure why he wasn't there. I'm sorry, I can't exactly remember. And Darren took me to one side, and he goes, right. He says, Dave. You're refereeing this, you okay to do this? Says, mate, it's just another deadlift. I said, I can only drop my hand when it hits the top. He goes, yeah, but it's the most important deadlift that's ever been done in the world so far. And I go, because everybody, including me to a certain degree, I mean, we had a certain amount of doubt whether this could even be done because it was that big a deal and it was such a massive jump. And also the fact is, at this stage now, other people have done it in sumo style, and Thor's done what he's done phenomenally, and that we didn't know what the human body was even going to do with that amount of weight on it. You know what I mean? We've all seen the bloody noses and all the rest of it. But was this guy's eyes going to pop out, or his legs going to break, or his bones going to be able to take it? It might sound mad, but always mad thoughts are going through your head, and we're all thinking, this has got to happen. You know what I mean? But as always, Eddie Hall, he delivered. You know what I mean? He came out there, and there was no doubt in his mind that was going up. But Darren, I remember sitting in the chair, and I kept getting moved back and moved back and moved back because there's so many cameras coming in there. There was a million cameras, and I can just remember being able to feel the whole. It felt like everybody was breathing down the back of my neck. And then just before Eddie started to come out with Rob, and Darren ran to side stage, you'll see Darren come over to me. Can I swear on here?
Go on, yeah.
Darren put his hand on my shoulder and he looked me square in the eyes. Remember, me and Darren have been friends for 20, 30 years. And he goes, don't fuck this up. So, on that note of confidence, he walked backstage side of stage to watch the lift. And the rest pretty much is history. But I will never forget in my days that you see the noise that erupted around that lift. It was deafening, absolutely deafening. It was really really phenomenal, and we didn't really know because Eddie stood there and took his accolades, and his wife was so relieved. I mean, she was genuinely terrified about him doing that lift. You only have to look in her eyes; that wasn't put on. Alex was properly scared about what was going to happen, and Eddie just didn't. That's it; it's happening no matter what. You know what I mean? That's going up, and then obviously the backstage. Carry on. Eddie did have problems. They were struggling to get his heart rate down and all that, but thankfully that was all put right, and he's doing what he's doing today. So a great day. But the interesting thing was as well when Eddie lifted it, came took the weight back to the floor. He'll collapse, and you'll see a team of us run around. I'm actually the guy that goes behind him, puts my hands under his arms. I was just trying to hold him up because he's not a small man. He was even bigger man then. Well, they got his straps off because I didn't want him collapsed on the bar and pressure being on his chest because he still had the suit on. We needed to get the belt off and all that sort of stuff. And he completely passed out in my arms. And I'm like, what, it's all right giving him a 500 down signal. I need one here for holding Eddie Hall up here. And they got his straps off, and I think they loosened his belt, and he sort of came to a bit, and he just went like that. And I can honestly say, and Eddie's known for his swearing, I was the first person he told to fuck off after he did the 500 kilo deadlift. But no, he was amazing as always, and it was just a fantastic thing. It was very, very hard to come down from, because I'll be honest with you, I can barely remember anything else about the rest of that show.
No, all the adrenaline.
Oh, it's sky high, sky high. I'm getting my adrenaline up now just thinking about it, And I was there at Thor's, and Thor's was amazing. I didn't referee it. I was stood right at the side of the stage for when he recently pulled it, the 510, and it was just like it made it look so easy. But I think the drama. It's still a massive increment, and it's the best deadlift that's ever been done. Is there a better deadlifter on the planet than Hafthor Bjornsson? No, never has been. He is the best deadlifter that ever was now, and probably will be for a long, long time to come. But I think because it was that first, I suppose it's like the Roger Bannister 4 minute mile. You know what I mean? He was the first man to break that half ton, and it felt massive at the time. And I'm not detracting from Thor's at all, because it was incredible and the crowd went bananas there. And you've got to hand it to Thor. Went on and did the rest of the show and won it. How, I do not know. I mean, that is the mark of the only man that could do that on this planet, and that's him. Brilliant.
Yeah, that was incredible that he did the whole show. And
Unbelievable.
it's strange you mentioning the Roger Bannister 4 minute mile thing. That was what was in my head when you were talking, was, if I remember it rightly, that was seen as impossible. And
Yeah,
then he did it, and then in the 6 months or something after that, like 10 other people did it because
yeah,
they saw what was possible. And I wonder if that's going to happen now with deadlifts, because we've got
yeah,
people like Adam Bishop now pushing towards
yeah.
500.
I see that, but the gap is still massive. you know, he's put a big marker there between him. I mean, there's nobody else hit 500 but Eddie.
Hmm.
He did his 501, which, people can say what they want about that. I 100% believe that lift was, the legitimate weight. It was refereed by Magnus, and it was just rubbish circumstances because of COVID. And I can't take anything away from Hapthor for doing that, even though there's this horrible conflict that has built up between himself and Eddie. But, I'm sure they both do all right out of that with social media, But anyway, that's part of what makes this sport great. In the boxing world, which you're a fan of, that some of the greatest fighters in the world don't send each other Christmas cards, do they?
Yeah, Chris Eubank and Nigel Benn, never really
Yeah,
got over the hatred.
yeah,
Well, I was just thinking then, you're talking about one huge legend in Eddie Hall and obviously Thor. We've sadly recently lost another huge legend of the strongman world, the Irish strongman world, and also
yeah,
the social media world. He was
yeah,
so famous and so
yeah.
popular.
And
I wondered what Par's passing kind of meant to you.
well, I'll try to hold this together because it's still a bit raw, to be honest with you. He was a good friend of mine for a lot of years.
Mm.
And me and Par always had the laugh because I won Ireland's Strongest Man 4 times. And I always called myself Ireland's Strongest Yorkshireman because, obviously, by the way I speak, I live in Ireland, but I'm not from here. I'm what they all call a blow-in. But Glenn allowed me to compete in the competition based on my residency here, if you like, you know what I mean? And I was kind of never, when I did Ulsters first and then Ireland's, I was never really that intent on making a massive comeback to the sport. I'd sort of retired. My goal was my little boy, to see what strongman was, so he would be able to tell his kids, his friends, that his daddy did strongman. So the joke between me and Pa was that if ever I'd competed against him, I'd have had a fifth title and he'd have only had four. You know, but that wasn't the case. First and foremost, Pa was my friend, and he was the friend of almost everybody I know in the strongman community, with very few exceptions. He was the most funny, thoughtful person that you could wish to meet, in terms of, when I say thoughtful, he didn't come run up to you with a bunch of flowers, but he always included people. You know what I mean? You always felt included when you were in his company, which is really important because, some of these guys, they're superstars now. You know what I mean? And to me, Power's one of the biggest superstars. Maybe some would argue not in the arena. He would have said that himself. But in terms of personality, effort, and showmanship, it's going to be hard to match another Power O'Dwyer. An unbelievable man, an unbelievable athlete, a great friend, and I have a bit of pride in my soul because he qualified for his first Britain's Strongest Man through shows that I ran. And the first one I did, I think he did was in Doncaster, and then he wanted to get to the arena show, and he qualified again and came to Sheffield, and did um, did a great job of qualifying. He didn't then the qualifying show. I'll never forget. He did it all, and he said at the end of it, "Those are rubbish events days for me." He goes, "Why?" I said, "I thought they were okay for everybody." He goes, "Well, you did a deadlift hold, and I've got a broken hand." Just after he'd won the show, you know, so he did the whole show with a broken hand, and he didn't get it that easy, but he did it with a broken hand, and then he made a really good um, uh, effort at Britain's that year, and I think through COVID and one thing's another. The show qualifying event I didn't run, so Park kind of got a bit of a free ticket to do a few more, represent Ireland at a few more Britain's Strongest Man shows, and always did well. And obviously his accolade was his second place there, where he had a hell of a performance on the Conan's wheel, which was in my mind unforgettable. But because he made it through to Giants Live through me, he met this circle of friends, and they were close friends. I mean, Luke Richardson was going to be Luke's best man at Luke's upcoming wedding. Darren Sadler, he stayed at Darren Sadler's house for weeks at a time and trained with Darren and trained in the facility down there. Darren thought he could get rid of him for a while, but that was par. You know what I mean? He was happy there and he was welcome there. I know what Darren's family's like, and you will never meet a nicer, more welcoming bunch of people wherever you go. They're amazing people, and Par sort of thought this is it. And I think that all those things helped him become the social media superstar, and also the showman that he was. You know what I mean? If you heard the roars and the cheers whenever Park came out at a show, he was starting to get almost into the Mark Felix level of appreciation. You know what I mean? And that speaks volumes. People that had never met him. And when I found out about his passing, it was fairly close to his passing, and I just got a flood of messages from people who knew that I knew him, knew that I was friend with him, and they'd never met him, just saying how much he'd helped them. And I thought that was what a legacy.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I've
Mm.
heard so many beautiful stories about him and him
I
as
could sit here all day and tell
yeah,
you a lot more. He's an amazing man and the funniest. I know everybody says this, but the most hysterically funny man I will ever have met. I will ever meet. I don't think I could ever meet anybody that was naturally so humorous and funny and just generally brings joy into your day whenever he was there. Your day just got better if Powers in it. It was definitely a true.
yeah,
I know everybody says nice things when people are here anymore, but I would have said that about Par maybe with a few more digs. But if he was sat next to me, and I wish he was.
yeah, yeah. I fully hear you. And yeah, Brits in 2022 was that huge moment for Parr when he
Yeah,
blew everyone out the water.
yeah,
And we're coming up to Brits now. It's in about a week from when we're sitting down. Um,
yeah.
I'm wondering, how do you feel about the events that you're going to have to referee? Any that you're concerned about? Because like Wrecking Ball hold isn't there, so we don't have to worry about is it down,
Yeah.
is it up.
I'll be honest with you. I don't. At this stage of the game for me, I focus on what I've got to do and how I'm going to do it and applying the rules. And worrying about it isn't really the word I was using. I don't have any significant concerns with these events. Some of the tricky things that we watch. I mean, the list here. I'm just casting my eye to the side just to remind myself exactly what we've got. We've got the circus press medley. The things to watch out for there is when we're on the dumbbell. We are pretty insistent that the dumbbell stays in its range of play so it doesn't roll away. And it's the athlete's responsibility to keep it there. It's how you define that, because sometimes it's very unfortunate. They'll put it down, they'll move on, and then ever so slowly it'll just rock to the side, fall off the platform, and roll across the floor. So we have to apply a bit of common sense and logic. If they've just tossed it down and it's bounced across the floor, then you go and get it, put it back there, and move on. That's the sort of thing that we have to watch out for there. But it's just to make sure that myself and Maggie, because there'll be two lanes of these guys running, are doing this equally and as exactly as fairly as we can match ourselves up, because we want to be. If you're both going to be the hardest ref in the world, that's fine, but one cannot be a little bit softer than the other. And I think that's probably something that Maggie and I do pretty well, and that's due to the fact that we have a good chat before. Car walk, the whistle blows, I hit a stopwatch. I have a backup timer as well, just in case something occurs. Well, like we have a failure on the stopwatch, the battery goes, or like I got one once that somebody left a lump of tacky on the top off. I pressed it and I couldn't turn it off, So if something like that happens, so I have somebody backing me up. So we've always got that. Axle deadlift, some new deadlifters in there. I think there's everybody on that list: Tom, Luke, Adam, Paddy, Gavin, Andrew, Graham. I mean, I've seen everybody deadlifting that lineup there, so I've got no real concerns about that. Bag toss, I've mentioned the concern that we have with the bag resting on the top. And the other thing you have to be mindful of with the bag toss, these guys, if you watch them now, they're so quick, there's no looking back. It's like a what do you call it? A mortar gun just going bang, 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 bang over the bar. So if they miss and hit the board, they'll sometimes have their hands on the next bag they're going to throw before that even hits the floor. That's how quick they are. And I need to make sure that I'm in a position to vocalize myself to make sure they drop that bag that they're picking up and go back to the one that didn't go over. It's not a noise any of those athletes want to hear, of course, because obviously that's going to cost them time. But what I can't allow to happen is the next bag to go over and the other one not have gone over. That causes an issue. Car walk, axle deadlift, power stairs. Yeah, power stairs. It's a great event, and I love it as a change from the stones. Now and again, the stones are great. I mean, they are the mark of a strong man, I think. But I think putting those in there probably evens things up. Even though Tom is phenomenal at everything, I'm sure he would have loved the stones to finish with because it's just like the ultimate banker for Tom Stoltman. Is that, you know what I mean? He's the fastest man in the world on the stones, and
Yep.
He's just phenomenal at them. It's like they've given him a set of polystyrene ones every time he picks them up. I've never seen anything like it. He's just an amazing athlete. So the power stairs will be interesting. You've got some great guys in there. Paddy's good at the power stairs. Luke, phenomenal. It's one of the better events for him as well in terms of deadlift. I think he'll do okay on that. But Tom is gonna storm through that, I think. But Bish, great deadlifter, great repetitive deadlifter, and I think bearing in mind, the way these events are laid out, it's all right. People saying, "Oh, I can deadlift 360." That's okay. I could probably train and get myself to get close to that now. But could I do 360 after doing a circus press dumbbell and a car walk? It wouldn't break the floor. I could probably hardly even bend down to get to the bar. I'd be that sore. It's just phenomenal the way these guys recover. And how quickly these events run. You know what I mean? These are, the whole show is just one event after the next. The guys don't have much time to get themselves together. So it's going to be interesting. I have my own thoughts as to how it's going to go. I think there'll be a couple of surprises in there and potentially with the new boys, a couple of upsets in terms of points. I can see that happening. What impact that'll have, I don't really know, but I can see some of the guys doing exceptionally well. I mean, Matthew McKeegan on the bag toss, if it's his day on the bag toss, unreal. Unreal. You know what I mean? He's phenomenal.
Yeah, Callum Crozier is very confident that he's put up video evidence that he's beaten Shane Flowers' world record time on the bags in training.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
right.
I haven't seen that video, but I've heard the rumors, and and Callum, he's an athlete. You know what I mean? He's conditioned, he's fit, he recovers well. Yes, this is very, very heavy for him, but it's very, very heavy for everybody. You know what I mean? It's a phenomenal. I don't know. Have you seen the new circus? The circus dumbbell, the barbell
The
presses.
fixed one, yeah. Ben and Bish went up to train on him a couple of weeks ago. I saw the videos. They look hideous.
Yeah, I mean, I was over briefly with Darren, and he took me to see them, and they were being manufactured at the time. and they had these bars sticking out of the balls at the end so they could rotate it to do the welding, and hold it in position, which obviously they've chopped off and ground down afterwards. But it made them look like the old, the old depth charges that used to sit in the sea for the for blowing up the ships. That's a look like one of those on each end of the bar. But no, but it's a phenomenal addition to the itinerary of events that Giants Live have, and it'll be something that'll be obviously used again, maybe for reps at some stage or something like that. I don't know what Darren's got up his sleeve.
How do you see the event? I don't want to force you into making actual predictions because you are the ref, you know. Do you see it as the Tom Stoltman show, as other people do? Do you think we're going to see a real mix-up in the podium?
Um, from what I see of Tom Stoltman, everything's been going really well for him. And Tom Stoltman on his A game will win Britain's Strongest Man. Tom Stoltman on his B game will win Britain's Strongest Man. you know, that's just me talking. But the thing is, with Tom, you have to get everything right. One mistake can cost you an awful lot at Britain's Strongest Man. If you screw up at the bag toss, which he's done before, you know what I mean? That might be not the greatest outcome for you. But those events there, it's Tom's looking incredibly strong. I think Luke will put in a phenomenal show, and he's had such a great run of athletic performances recently, and he just seems to be. It's amazing that he's turned 40, and now he just seems to have hit the sweet spot. He looks better. He's mentally more focused. I'm a big fan of Luke. He's such a nice guy. Always has plenty of time for everybody. But you see, when he switches that game face on, which he's learned to do, I think, in the last couple of years, there's no prisoners coming with him. It's boof, and it's been really great to see that evolve. It's taken a while, Luke, if you're watching this, but brilliant, mate. I love it. Adam Bishop, good friend of mine, known him a long, long time, and he just. What can I say about Adam? He's a phenomenal athlete. He's probably the biggest weakness in there, although he seems to be really overcoming it with the training that he's been doing, would be anything overhead, which would be self-admitted there. But the other events in there, pretty good for him, really, pretty good. So Adam's a very, very strong contender. And Adam's a perfectionist. He knows what he's capable of doing, and he's really, really good at delivering it on the day. Paddy Haynes, what can you say about Paddy? You don't know what Paddy we're going to see. All I'll say is it'll be better than the last. You know what I mean? Because that man there's no brakes on him. He's going places. And I love the energy around Paddy. I think he's a great person. I just love the way he puts himself forward, and he's becoming a real crowd favourite. The crowd do invest in Paddy. They love to see him. You look at Paddy in that lineup, you think he's a smaller guy, and I've said this before on podcasts and stuff. You stand next to him, he's a massive man. He's so much, was he 6'3",
Yeah,
something
he's
like that,
6'3"
6'3".
and
But just the way he's
130
put
odd.
together, yeah. And he almost reminds me. You see, Hapthor. If you stand back from Hapthor, you think that's a big lad, and as you get closer, he goes, he's a really big lad. And as you get right up, because proportionately he's perfect. You know what I mean? He's got this beautiful physique. You know what I mean? He's not out of shape or anything like that. He's just absolutely phenomenal. He's just loaded. And then you get close to him, and you get a stiff neck because he's just so enormous. And he's like a mini version of that. He's just taller than you expect, if you know what I
Yeah.
mean.
Hmm.
Um, Gav Bilton, when Gav's on form, I mean, he is an unstoppable force. He's really, really good. Gavin, I still think Gavin has yet to put in his ultimate performance. I've seen him do bits and pieces, and if the day that he pulls all that together, watch out. He's an absolute flipping unit, a big man, a big-hearted guy, but very, very focused. He lives for this. He absolutely lives for it. He's a great lad. Well, I'm very fond of all these lads that I know well. I know Tom reasonably well, Luke quite well, Adam very well. Um, Paddy, we just seem to get on. I haven't known him that long because he's not been on the scene that long. Gav, I've known him for ages on the scene. Love the guy. Andrew, I've met a few times. Kind of quiet at the shows, but always delivers. Andrew Flynn, love him. He's one to watch. He's so meticulous. He just seems to be able to, whatever he has to do, he just seems to be able to pull it out of the bag. He's very, very interesting man to watch. Hicksy is uh, one of the most powerful men I've ever been in the company of. He's an absolute bull of a man. He's fit, he's fast, he's strong. I know he's had a few overhead issues with muscle tears and things like that, but he's looking really good. He could deliver on the day. Then again, it's going to be a solid performance from Ben. I think he's well familiar with the kit. I think he's been annoying the life out of Darren to practice on it every week for the past while. So good on you, Ben. That's the attitude you need to come out on top. Callum, don't know him too well. He was lovely at the World Tour finals, even though he went wrong way with the duck walk. So I hope he's got his compass with him this year. But really good guy. I love to see these lightweight guys mixing it up. Rory, what can I say? He's going to be phenomenal. I so hope he puts in the performance that I know he's capable of, and he's going to shock a lot of people. And I'd reiterate exactly the same for Matthew. He is better known because he's been on maybe some slightly bigger platforms in terms of Europe's and World's OSG, and he's very he's very visible on social media, so people have seen what Matthew can do. But he's phenomenal, and it's a big ask for him to be here. He knows that, but he has trained really hard, and everything in his training has gone really well. So fingers crossed he can just deliver the way I know he's capable of. Connor's coming at the last minute. I think he's filled in for Luke Richardson, who decided to withdraw for various reasons, but the main one I think he just was the passing of Part is just too raw for him, which I'm thinking about you, Big Luke, and you will be back bigger and better. And he is because Luke Richardson. What you might not know about Luke, he was one of the guys that used to come and help us set up. You know what I mean?
I remember seeing him,
And
yeah.
yeah, and it was great. Anything heavy to lift, Luke, and I was always in awe of this young guy, and he was just so easy going and easy to get along with, and he always came across as if everybody was picking on him. Well, you wouldn't pick on him now, would you? But he was this 21-year-old guy that could deadlift 400 kilos, bench press 300 kilos, and squat 400 kilos. You know what I mean? And you don't see many of those in your lifetime, and I'm just glad he's been able to roll out into strongman. I'm sorry that he's had so many injuries, but I can't wait to see him back because he is just a phenomenon. So Connor, I wish him the best of luck. He's a bit of a last minute call up, but he's a solid performer. He's always done well at Scotland's Strongest Man. A lovely big guy, and I know he'll be keen to make sure that he's not just there to make the numbers up. So what a lineup! I mean, you couldn't beat that lineup, could you? You couldn't pick a better lineup. Barring Luke Richardson in there, who else would you put in it?
Well, exactly. It is the cream of the crop from British Strongman,
Yeah,
with so many World Strongest Man competitors, ex-British champions.
yeah.
I don't envy you having to referee such tight competitions, but it's going to be
Mm.
incredible.
Yeah. No, I'm excited. Honestly, I mean, I love every Giants live I do, but Britain's Strongest Man always holds a special place because of my familiarity with all of those competitors, and and some of them, yes, they are my friends, but I just want to say, from a referee's perspective, it doesn't matter. They can't not be my friends. We're in each other's pockets. At 4 or 5 shows every year, 6 if we go to Worlds. And they're nice guys. We spend time together, but they know when they're sitting in front of me on the platform, they have to perform or the arm's not moving.
Yeah, I love that. Dave, thank you so much for your time, buddy. It's been incredible to hear from you and yeah, to hear from the ref, the guy who's going to be there making the important decisions. Um,
You're very welcome. I'm just congratulations on putting this together. I think the more noise we make about strongman, and the more stories people start to hear about. My story is not about me; it's about the other people that help me do that allow me to have a job to do. So I'm very grateful for that. So, but and I see some of the guys you've had on there. There'll be a lot more people keen to interact with you, I'm sure.
oh, I hope so. It's been an absolute pleasure so far. And yeah, much more to come, hopefully.
Yeah,
All right. Thank
good
you so
stuff.
much, Dave.
Yeah, no problem, mate. If I can help you with anything going forward, let me know. I'm always here.